All right, welcome to Social Justice Week event, Social Entrepreneurship and Sustainability. SSU student Shelby Wade created Sonoma State Social Justice Week and it launched in 2015. The goal is to provide a space for not only Sonoma State student body, but the community as well to contribute ideas, gain perspective, and gain understanding of current social issues. Its mission is to connect students with advocates to help students develop a theoretical understanding of whose land SSU sits upon and the power of grassroots activism for human betterment and social change while raising student and community awareness and engagement with issues embedded in societal social structures of inequality, colonialism, imperialism, classism, ableism, sexism, patriarchy, heterosexism, queerphobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and religious and other discrimination. To involve students in social justice issues and organizations which produce socially responsible students educated to be effective personal and social change agents in the pursuit of justice, community engagement, collaborative partnerships that strengthen communities, provide services, and prepare students, and contributes to equitable distribution of economic, political, civil, cultural, social, and other resources and opportunities in society in order to promote personal, campus, and community development. Long before California, Sonoma County, and Sonoma State University, the land around us was inhabited by indigenous peoples collectively known as the Coast Miwok and Southern Pomo. Now they are formally recognized as the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria and chaired by Greg Saris, who also holds the Great Rancheria Endowed Chair at SSU. Sonoma State acknowledges the gratitude of the Rancheria's ancestors for their stewardship of the land and all of its resources, and thanks the current membership for the partnership and a number of educational initiatives, including the Federal Indians of Great Rancheria Learning Center at the Federal Fairfield Osborne Preserve located at Sonoma Mountain. As Professor Saris writes in his 2017 book, How Mountain Was Made, it is said that the coyote was sitting atop Sonoma Mountain when he decided to create the world and people. But that is part of the big story of the mountain. We are now all part of the big story of the mountain, and our stewardship of its resources, including our county and our university, is an ongoing vital responsibility we recognize and we gladly accept. Learn more about our Native American initiative at Sonoma State University. I am Grace Swan, and I'm a fourth year anthropology student here at Sonoma State University, and I will be your host. I will first introduce our presenter from the business department here at Sonoma State University. The way you can participate and interact with the speaker will be explained later. Caitlin will be running technology, organizing questions for the speaker, keeping time and enforcing the ground rules. She'll be also running the chat behind the scenes and tech today, and I will be doing the speaking. At the end of the presentation, we'll have 30 minutes for Q&A. If you would like to speak, there is a microphone for you to use. I am pleased to introduce Nadiya Parekh from the business department here at Sonoma State University. Nadiya is a professor at the Department of Business and Economics here at Sonoma State University and was educated at the management schools of Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, and the National Institute of Technology, Calicut. Her research interest is in the domain of social entrepreneurship, finance, and sustainability. After her doctoral studies, she joined as assistant professor at the Center for Social Entrepreneurship School of Management and Labor Studies at Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai, India, where she worked on the social financing and quantitative research domains of their globally acclaimed innovative master's course in social entrepreneurship. Today, she'll be speaking about social entrepreneurship and sustainability. I will now go over the ground rules. The first part of this presentation, or this first part will be a session will be a presentation, and the second will be a chance for you to interact and ask questions. As part of our continuing commitment to social justice work, when we experience examples of oppression, we will speak up. This means we can interrupt the meeting and draw the issue to one another's attention. We will do this so kindly, with care, and in good faith. This statement is a reminder that we commit to do this in service of ending oppression. Step up and step back. If you speak often, don't speak as much. If you don't speak as much, speak more. Be courteous to others and avoid inflammatory language. Speak from your own perspective. Criticize ideas, not individuals. We will not tolerate any derogatory nor hateful language or actions. Avoid speaking over each other and respect people's contributions. The consequences of violating the ground rules will be warnings, and if they persist, you may be asked to leave the presentation. Hecklers will not be tolerated. There are surveys on the chairs for you to fill out after every presentation. And now I will turn it over to Nadiya, and she'll be presenting and answering questions throughout the session.
Thank you, Grace, and it's so nice to see you all. As she was introducing, I am from SSU in the business department, and probably you're wondering, what does business have to do with social justice, right? So in my space, which is social entrepreneurship and sustainability, where I'm kind of trained in, and my doctoral studies was all about kind of understanding more about the intersections, I basically remind that social justice is a critical aspect in business as well. And by looking at it that way, you can actually do a lot more good in a sustainable manner. So that's what I thought would be a good way for us to interact today. And I'm really looking forward to your thoughts, because we're kind of closely related disciplines, social science and business, but at the same time, within the same university, we don't get much chances to kind of have this kind of interaction. So thanks for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. And without further delay, as Grace mentioned, right, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So stay tuned when I would give, kind of chance to all of you to share your perspective on what you see as an application of social entrepreneurship in your space. So before that, some basics as to the term social entrepreneurship and sustainability, right? So if you look at the word sustainability, before we get into the primary aspect of what is social entrepreneurship, you can see that a lot of our higher education focus on sustainability is basically biased or leaning towards environmental science or climate change issues and solutions. As much as sustainability has a lot to do with climate change, it is not only about the environment, right? And if you think about it, have you guys taken any sustainability related courses? Not yet. But in general terms, if you ask sustainability in the higher education space, a course that is focused on sustainability, it talks less about the social side and the economic side of sustainability, and it gears more towards the environmental. However, as much as this is a trend that we see happening more and more, and people questioning less and less, I kind of use forums as an opportunity to say that if we don't see it from the social side and from the economic side, we're really not focusing on the real term of sustainability, and the intersections should never be forgotten. So in higher education space, when you hear about sustainability courses, always make sure that you check that it's not just either or, right? It has to have components of social justice as well. And this framework really mentions about things that really need to be part of the sustainability dialogue, and sometimes often not really given enough emphasis. So it has environmental justice in it, but at the same time, if you look at this figure that you have, if you really want something to be sustainable, even if it's a climate change solution, if it impacts a lot of people, the solution that you have come up with. I remember one of the social entrepreneur whom I kind of trained during my earlier career, they had a waste management solution, which was really, really kind of good for the planet. But at the same time, as like Grace introduced me, it was being implemented in India, where I came from. And there, the waste management was the main livelihood of women who were kind of doing the waste picking and sorting, and that was their primary kind of livelihood and source of income. So eventually, the social entrepreneurs who had this climate change solution realized that if they really want to make the change towards kind of the eco-friendly solution that they want people to turn to, they need to include these women who were actually more expert in waste management than the high-tech engineers who they thought they can come up with the solution. And while they kind of partnered with women who were in this space in their own way for their economic livelihood reason, they found that it had a more sustainable approach to their solution, and their business model worked well. So in order to make something sustainable, the point is that even if you may be aiming at, say, or beginning with an environmental solution, you really need to think about how does it impact the intersections of social life and economics at large. And for all you know, if you, as social science students, you come up with interventions which can make community life better. Say someone is working with the population who is experiencing homelessness, right? As much as maybe the first step is to give them the comfort of a kind of move them from streets to the shelter, and then kind of looking at long-term housing options. It's definitely not a sustainable solution until and unless you think of what about their economic empowerment, right? In the sense that how can they stay in a house if they're really not looking at the larger context of how can they participate in the economy? So what are the social aspects or the mental health aspects that you need to focus on for that? What are the trainings that they require on the job front to participate in every opportunity that is being presented by the economy? So even social solutions need to consider the other aspects of economics and also the context of how it impacts the larger environment. So basically, the point of discussing the intersectionality is that when we talk about the term sustainability, it's not either or, and it does need to think of things holistically so that it is equitable and viable. And the best way these days, when you think of the term sustainability, is to look at the UN SDGs, right? The United Nations says that if you were to get out of this silos of either thinking of environment or social and economic issues in isolation, think of the unmet global development goals, which is listed by the UN as areas that organizations and institutions and corporates, for that matter, can really contribute to. And as individuals too, when we want to pick a theme to work on, we can look at which resonates with us. At the same time, how much of these have intersectionality. So anybody who is familiar with these 17 goals in any context of anything that you learned before? Yeah. So the United Nations came up with these 17 goals, like as you can see up there: no poverty, zero hunger, on health front and education front, and with respect to climate change. And also, if you look at the last one, with respect to aspects that you can do to contributing to peace and justice through partnerships, right? So what United Nations says that if you look at the word sustainability, you don't want to ignore the social side of it, because a lot is to do with people. There are some things to do with planet. However, beyond that, there is the well-being of the globe as such, the prosperity and the peace, a situation where you kind of operate respecting everybody's existence and coexistence. And if you really want to contribute to each goals, you need to think, saying that if I'm working for no poverty, that doesn't mean that I will look at only that issue, right? As much as I work with that, I have scope for, as you can see in the 17th goal, to partner with organizations who can kind of move the needle on my goal, at the same time make sure that they can contribute to the larger aspects, say decent work. As much as you want people to come out of poverty, give them access to food, access to home, you also want to make sure that they have access to economic opportunities, they participate in the larger discourse of environmental justice that we hear today as well. So these SDGs have the root from the Millennium Development Goals that was set earlier, and we all have a role to play in order to make this sustainability in action. So I have a small clipping, which, as most of you said, that these SDGs are not that familiar to us, which talks about what they are. So if you can play that, yeah. Yes, thank you.
In the year 2000, leaders from 189 countries agreed on a vision for the new millennium. They wanted to end extreme poverty in all of its forms. So they made a list of 8 goals called the Millennium Development Goals. and they wanted to achieve these goals in 15 years. One of the leading organizations working to fulfill these goals has been the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP. We're present in more than 170 countries and territories. We championed the goals so that people everywhere would know what they were and how people could do their part. We funded projects that helped fulfill the goals. We helped countries accelerate NDG progress by breaking down the silos and working across sectors. We acted as scorekeeper, helping countries to track progress. As a result, the number of people that live on less than $1.25 per day has dropped by more than half. The number of primary school age kids who don't go to school, down by almost half. The number of people getting life-saving treatment for HIV increased by over 15 times. Child mortality, down by almost half. As much progress as we have made together, there's still a lot more to do. Over 800 million people are still living on less than $1.25 a day. 1 in 9 people on our planet goes to sleep hungry each night. Deforestation remains alarmingly high in many countries. Oceans are becoming more acidic, threatening food security and marine ecosystems. And about 1 of every 6 adults in the world is illiterate. 2/3 of them are women. We think those are tough numbers, and so do leaders from the countries where we work. So in September 2015, they agreed on a new set of goals to help finish the work we all started in 2000. The new goals are called the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. We have made significant progress in the last 15 years, and we think there's plenty of room for hope, for action in the next 15 years. Today, the world is more connected by technology. We know more about how to balance the 3 pillars of sustainable development: social progress, economic growth, and environmental protection. However, our climate is changing. Our planet is transforming, and there are more people on Earth than ever before. We at UNDP believe everyone can have enough of what they need living within our planetary boundaries, and we are working around the world to make this happen. Our goals to reach by 2030 are to eradicate extreme poverty, protect our environment, and much more. UNDP has 50 years of experience working with countries to make this a more prosperous, healthy, inclusive, and sustainable world. Join us.
Yeah, so as we saw, this is nothing new. It always existed as before they mentioned as a Millennium Development Goal. And even if you look at the progress that they mentioned, there's a lot more to do. So if you go back to our discussion about how this gives us a good picture of what sustainability means and what all dimensions on the social side it can assume and the intersectionalities that exist. The social entrepreneurship domain mentions about how important that all of us are aware, wherever or whichever space we are in, that how can we contribute and how can we create solutions around these unmet goals? Because if as much as there's a target of 2030, we know that there's a lot of work to do and a lot more needs to happen in collaboration, right? So this video we just watched, and I hope that we can transition to the next slide, which connects our discussion to what social entrepreneurship has to do with sustainability. So by now we know that sustainability has a lot to do with all 3 domains of people, planet, and the peace and justice that we're kind of talking about. And social entrepreneurs are people who are kind of doing their own way by which they're creating business models as solutions that they think can work for the Sustainable Development Goals. So even prior to having the term of SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, we have entrepreneurs thinking of what are the things that they see around them that they feel like the current system is not good enough to create a change. And can we create new institutional models to fill that void? So social entrepreneurship is all about, can entrepreneurial skills be used to solve social and environmental problems, and in a way that you kind of meet the development goals and make the world a better place. So basically in this discussion, I hope that by end you'll get to know what this approach is and what social entrepreneurs are like. right? So they are, for all you know, people like us who care for different things, just like how we are passionate about certain aspects and we are skillful to make changes in those direction. However, the only difference is as entrepreneurs, they take action. However, maybe we are more skilled and more enabled and more resourceful, but we have not yet taken action. So it's just the difference of, do you have the courage to take action around the causes that you really care for and build institutions around? So social entrepreneurs are people who execute business models and create institutions. It could be nonprofits, it could be for-profits, or it could be hybrid entities in between. But only thing is, as you can see in this slide, their focus is that they are coming up with sustainable solutions, even if their primary cause may be to kind of gear towards people-focused solution. They also are mindful of the fact that what they propose need to be viable economically so that they can continue doing what they're doing, and also has a positive impact on the planet. Or for that matter, if they're starting from the planet dimension, they want to make sure that the other P's are taken into account so that it's a sustainable solution. So going back to the term of what is a social entrepreneur, you can see that it has two terms within, right? It is to do with social and it has the term entrepreneurs. So I want to pause here to ask you this question. When you hear the word entrepreneurs, what is the kind of image that comes to your mind? Who is an entrepreneur? Who comes to your mind when you hear the word an entrepreneur? He is an entrepreneur, she's an entrepreneur. What is the kind of image that comes to your mind when you hear that term?
I don't know the guy's name, but he was on Shark Tank and he did the doorbell thing and all the sharks were like, "Oh, no, like we don't want to help you." And then he became like a billionaire because he's the founder of Ring and he sold his company. So then he became one of the sharks. But I
Yeah.
can't remember his name, but that guy.
Yeah, that's totally fine. But that's a good example that you gave, right? When you hear the word entrepreneur, you think about someone who takes action, who makes a lot of money by taking that act. And also the Shark Tank is a great example of how they pitch and they kind of get a good support for their idea, right? Anyone else who wants to contribute to their thoughts on what is the image that comes to your mind when you hear of an entrepreneur? Not really? Yeah, you? Yeah.
Jay-Z comes to mind.
Yeah, that's a good example. So mostly, as I have in my next slide, right? When you think of entrepreneurs, you think of people who made a lot of money, people who'd run successful businesses. And as you said, some of the examples that you have are these kind of big shot company founders that you think of, right? But what if you add the word social to entrepreneur? How does that look like? Less mind, guys. Okay. Yeah. So going back to her observation of what is an entrepreneur, right? If you think of just like how we just mentioned, right? For too long, we have heard of entrepreneurship to do with only folks who have been successful in making profits. It's also very important that we have people coming from diverse background who have done something entrepreneurial with the same concept of those big business heads that we thought of when you first think of the word entrepreneur, and these are the images that comes up. You can use the same approach to create a better world and solutions for the betterment of humanity. So the founder of Summer, which is a social enterprise, she kind of mentioned, Leila, so she kind of mentioned that it is possible to combine the social aspect to entrepreneurship and create businesses which are not less profitable. Sometimes you can make enough money by doing something good as well. And there's nothing wrong if you do good and make money. In fact, that's the best spot to be in, right? So if you look at examples like her, where she says that she found an opportunity not to kind of maximize profit, but create an organization which gives chance for people who are otherwise not getting an opportunity to participate in the economy. So the solution that she had was to create a company, a for-profit data-based company, which gives the artificial intelligence power of training in data science to people from developing nations, especially the low-income individuals who were not trained to participate in this big change that our economy is kind of thriving on, right? There's a lot of job opportunities around there, but at the same time, this chance is not given to all. So if you look at her statement of how she came up with the business idea, saying that talent is everywhere, but at the same time, opportunity is not reaching everybody who is talented, right? Someone who is in a different geography where they're not equally capable of participating in the economy because of the fact that they don't have the training, they don't have the opportunity as much as when we think of where we are, right? So she was in the US, she was trained, I believe, in Howard, and she was kind of having her organization operating in California. However, she kind of brought that prosperity and training that she had to be shared with people in the low-income Calgary who probably didn't have any way to participate in the digital and the data science boom that we can see. So mixing social aspect to entrepreneurship is not as difficult as we think. But the only thing is, as our professor just reminded us, right? When we think of the word entrepreneur, we don't think of people other than kind of the big founders that we are super familiar with who have made millions of dollars, right? So it could be diverse as people, not just men, not just white. It could be people from any geography, any ethnic background or race. And if you look at putting together these two words, an entrepreneur at the end of the day, going back to that key root term, is someone who undertakes action, who organizes, manages, and takes risk to create an enterprise. So that's why the word entrepreneur, right? They take action to mobilize resources and create a business, which is an enterprise to make that opportunity come in action. So it is nothing contradictory if you add the word social before it, for the fact that some of these opportunities are not just to do with profit. It can be profitable, and there's all the more joy that you can do good and make money. But if what motivates you is to create something that is good for the planet and people, then you can club the word social. And at the end of the day, the word social means to do with people, right? It's as simple as that. So what matters to you most in life to do with people, to do with planet? If you can think of that and combine the spirit of entrepreneurship, that's what essentially social entrepreneurship is. So people from the social science background has a huge role to play, because if you really want to have creative entrepreneurship models in the social space, you need to have people from diverse background. And if you look at who are these social entrepreneurs, they are people like you and me. And as I have put up there, the thing is, the only difference is that when we all encounter experiences in life, either which comes to you, like when life gives you, or people who are in our community or dear to us in our family and friend circle, when life gives you hard realities, can you make something meaningful out of it, right? So it's as simple as the familiar term of, when you get a lemon, can you make a lemonade, rather than crib off, this is what I got, right? So we all have experiences sometimes we were not prepared for, and then we looked for solutions and we didn't really see any. Yes, I see a question. That is a good question for all of us to reflect, right? Because what we see in media to a large extent influences us, just like how you mentioned when I asked the term, where did you what image came to your mind? You said Shark Tank, right? So what the media kind of celebrates as entrepreneurship is people who actually have opportunities that they can capitalize on, or not to say that they are solutions like that are not needed. Maybe they are meeting some needs very much on the economic side, but at the same time, if you look at while doing it, what are we taking away from the planet? What are we taking away from people? Are we giving equal opportunities for people to participate in that opportunity? If that's missing, then it's not social entrepreneurship. But as you asked, since the media generally is driven by the fact that it is geared to the investment side, the Shark Tank is basically looking at who should kind of resource or kind of provide resources to these kind of innovative ideas, right? So to large extent, the picture that we have when we look at the term entrepreneur or business is to do with profit, for the fact that it is all driven by the financial side of it. Yeah, so it's always not enough to look for answers in media alone, right? That's why we don't want to trust only Google, even though some of the founders' names that we have as successful entrepreneurs comes from there. Because if you look at the social entrepreneurship side, as I was just mentioning, can you tie your life experiences when you were looking for solutions, when life hit you hard, or your surrounding kind of people whom you were kind of dealing with in your community, family, friend circle, and you felt like there is no institution, there is no system that can really give justice or answer these kind of things. And why is it missing? Because maybe it was not that profitable to be in the limelight to kind of execute those ideas. They were hard, complex social problems. But can you think of coming up with some sustainable solutions here? So when I say sustainable, again, going back to our initial discussion, it should be economically viable and also not in such a way that you're extracting the resources from the planet to an extent that you're depleting it for future generations, right? So can we look for causes that you really care for and create models and businesses around that? So that's what the father of social entrepreneurship, who created an organization called Ashoka, said, that the concept of social entrepreneurship is saying that everyone is a change maker. Yeah. So anybody like you and me has the potential to become a social entrepreneur, for the fact that we do think that there are so many areas that our current systems need to change, right? We need to work on. Can we act on it? And then you have a potential to be a change maker. So again, to give us some faces of who are these social entrepreneurs and change makers, I have another video which talks about some of these folks. Probably you might have seen them, but not as popular as the people who we generally associate with the word entrepreneurs. So let's just listen to what they have to say about opportunities that exist.
The framework within which we have been working is not working. Poverty, unemployment, food crisis, oil crisis, everything. We need to build a new civilization where you won't have that. It's not the money obsession, it's about human beings.
I am Runa Khan, founder and executive director of Friendship.
I'm Kyle Zimmer, and I'm president and CEO of an organization called First Book.
I'm Jamie McAuliffe. I'm the president and CEO of Education for Employment.
We expand the idea of business rather than making money. Another business would be business to solve problems.
First Book is an international organization that provides a steady stream of books and educational resources to programs and classrooms that serve children in need.
Friendship is an organization which works in the most remote areas of Bangladesh. We work in healthcare, education, relief reconstruction, rehabilitation, sustainable income generation, and cultural preservation.
Vision Spring is an organization that provides access to affordable vision services and eyeglasses to people throughout the world.
Education for Employment. It's dedicated to providing jobs for youth in the Middle East and North Africa, part of the world that has the highest rates of youth unemployment and a very large youth demographic.
We work in Myanmar and we basically design, create, and market products for rural families that will boost their incomes.
We do this all across Myanmar, about 80% of the country.
People tend to think of a social enterprise as something which is an NGO situation, so you don't have to be a professional, but you need professionals. Then it becomes a social enterprise which can grow.
Having access to the World Economic Forum for any social entrepreneur gives us a greater chance to scale our impact.
We're able to connect with people from all over the world who are focused on the same issues.
It's all about reaching more people and affecting change.
We have enough technology, we have enough ability, enough innovative capacity to create the world that we feel comfortable with, we feel proud of creating that world.
So as you can see, some of these faces, have you seen them before? No? One of him, that the last person that you listened to is Professor Mohammed Yunus, who is a Nobel laureate. He was in the profession of economics, teaching in a university, just like how we are kind of, and then he worked with his students to come up with a field action project of what if you see that you can give small loans to women in Bangladesh where he is operating, and saying that what if they are given this small loans to create businesses and find sustainable solutions to kind of create an ongoing income for them? Will they be able to participate in economic opportunities? Because the mainstream banks were not actually working with them because they didn't have any collaterals. So some of these models have scaled to an extent that, as you can see in the video, the World Economic Forum actually supports these kind of ideas to scale. But to start off, it is something small, and it is all about acting on issues that you really care for. And this is again a feature from the Forbes, which mentions about a lot of people like you and me who acted on issues and then kind of getting attention from media. But there are millions who probably you don't have even know who they are, right? But at the end of the day, if you are passionate about what you think you can do in this space, it is as simple as the quote up there. People generally like to work on things on what they love. But when we look for a career, sometimes we miss on that part because we think that it's all about making the economic side of life, right? But if you really pick on things that you love and understand as the area that you want to work on, you can really feel that you have the courage to create sustainable solutions around there. So if you want to protect the things that you want to learn more about and you love a lot and create a change there, then the change-making profession of social entrepreneurship is the right space to be in, because you're kind of drawing inspiration from things that you have seen in your community that requires change, and then creating and implementing solutions around that in a sustainable way. So we looked at the Grameen Bank model that I just spoke about in Bangladesh, which basically said the way our economic system, the way the banks work, does not include women, especially in developing nations. So can you create banking systems for women to participate in entrepreneurship? So again, this is an example of a woman who actually thought that her mother did not have ways by which she could be mobile when she was aging. And she came up with a solution of a mobility-based enabler called Alinker. And she said that this is a solution for people to be healthy, active, and keep moving no matter if they were on a wheelchair. So this actually lets a person who is on wheelchair to be mobile at the same time. She says that it helps them to have social interactions, because sometimes when you are having a disability and you're not able to move around like others, you are missing out on your ability to participate in interactions too. Again, another example of someone who actually had a family member who was fighting cancer, and she and her mother created an organization called CanFem, which gave people who are facing or going through treatment for breast cancer or survivors certain solutions which the medical side cannot provide, but it is crucial for them to kind of participate in a way that they have respect and honor in society, right? So coming up with solutions which can empower people while they have already a difficult situation of battling something like cancer. So again, this is partly kind of not hard to read maybe, but this is again a solution from someone who said that on the education side, there are a lot of missing links. Like you may see a B and a C, mediocre SAT score student from the low income side, not able to participate in higher education, even though you may see the same kind of level students from higher income side able to easily move to colleges. So he created a business social enterprise model where there is workshops happening at a school and a college level, making them possible to fill out the application and get empowered to look at higher education as a space to be, and making sure that they are not missing on the opportunities that they have. Just because you are in a family with no guidance, that doesn't mean that you don't have to. Here again, Be Light is another example, which I'm kind of picking up from different sectors, where they say, if you look at the environment solutions, a lot exist on the solar side in the developing nations, in the developed nations, right? But what about in the developing nations? So this is a solution where he worked with the people in Africa to come up with solar-based products. So they are employed there and at the same time creating environmental solutions in such a way that they have an economic and a social kind of a benefit around that business solution. Again, this is a brand that probably you all are familiar with. Again, this is part of a social entrepreneurship solution, right? Patagonia, which is a business that we probably are all kind of too familiar with, again, says that is a great example of social entrepreneurship, because he say that every time when you buy a jacket, you need to think that if you don't want it, don't buy it, because our primary commitment is to the earth as our shareholder rather than the investors. So this is about selling outdoor apparel to make our commitment to planet and get people outdoor. So we see increasingly the change kind of a logo in businesses, which you probably might have seen against business products, right? The B certification saying that people are looking at businesses and entrepreneurs to create and act as a force of change. So social enterprises are nothing but using business and entrepreneurial skills to create good in our society, but in a sustainable manner. So I hope you know who they are. You know, if you look around, there are a lot of models of for-profit, non-profit, and hybrids that you can think of. And the best way to see it in action is to look at cases of what's possible around you. So one of the books that I recently wrote is nothing but a compilation of getting to know these enterprises a little more by looking at the stories of what inspired people to take action and how is social enterprise drawing interdisciplinary ideas from the social science space, from the business space, and actually creating solutions, what governments, we sometimes can kind of endlessly hope that the state should provide solutions, but it is on us to actually move the needle on sustainability. So with that, I believe that if you're interested, you will look into more resources on social entrepreneurship and social enterprises. And I invite all of you to think of what are the areas in which you can think of, instead of thinking of a traditional charity, a nonprofit model for some of the social causes that you're passionate about, or maybe not going to the business route alone of being only profit maximizing. Can you think of this middle ground? And if you look at it, there's a lot of impact investing that is happening where you can have resources to start some of these social enterprises, which is the middle ground that people are kind of thinking, which is best for the future of how our world is unfolding, right? So what are your thoughts on it? And any questions that I can take up at this space is where I want to end. So thank you for listening. And I'm hoping that this will inspire at some point of your life too, not just kind of look at life and education as separate things, but to think of ideas where life can give you opportunities to take action as entrepreneurs. So thank you. And any questions? Yes?
I have a question. My question is, sorry, I'm like looking at it.
No worries, take your time.
So with your presentation, like, what are you trying to like change or like kind of like your main focus about social entrepreneurship?
The
Like,
main thing that I really want to convey is saying that if you have a cause that you're really passionate about, there should be something that you can do about it as a change maker, because you have experienced it either firsthand as someone who encountered that situation, or you've seen people struggle for solutions. And if you really know the ground realities, it's actually very much needed that you come up with solutions and come up with enterprise models that can solve it. And when you strategize and think about how to do it, always think that if you are looking at only from social side and creating a model where it is like a typical non-profit charity based, we're always driven by donors, then maybe it's not sustainable enough, because you're missing on the economic viability side, just like the Venn diagram that I have initially started the discussion with. But if you're like coming up with a solution only on the business side and only looking at the opportunity to make money, then again, it's not sustainable. So if you have a cause that you really want to act on, you want to think of making change by looking at the social, environmental, and economic dimension, which is rightly brought up on this slide, right? So think of causes that you're passionate to take up, and think of it in terms of solution, such a way that it is most sustainable and it is speaking to the cause that you want to work on, but at the same time, not having to depend upon donor funds all the time. Because if you look at it, there are so many causes that we see the nonprofit world takes up, right? As much as it's important to have that third sector, when you think of social entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurship approach, the only difference is, can we also think of looking at how can I operationally, economically sustain too? So that's why the business or the entrepreneurial mindset comes into play there. Yeah.
what impact do you think your work is going to leave or has already left on social entrepreneurship?
So in terms of impact, generally the way, if you look at the social entrepreneurs that are doing, kind of examples that we see, there is a lot of, from the academic side, if you ask my work, I'm not an actual social entrepreneur, right? Like it's more like my teaching and research side. So one of the things that I believe it is really important, and which I felt like when I was a student that I missed, is that when you study business or management, you have the examples of all those white men that you kind of saw as the successful businesses that you want to learn from. And your whole pedagogy is about how can you create more wealth on the profitability side and the shareholder side. So the impact that I see from the teaching and research on social entrepreneurship is to give these role models on the social entrepreneurship side and say that this is creating larger impact, because it's not just creating profits. It may have the entrepreneurial business side to make things viable, but it has a lot to do with people, how it's changing the lives of people, enabling people to participate in the economic opportunities. And also, maybe if it's a climate change solution that the entrepreneur is working on, in what ways it is adding to the environmental justice side. So by imparting that in educational and institutions, by giving those role models to students early on, I feel like they don't miss out on that opportunity. Because if you look at social entrepreneurs, they are the ones who have the courage and the creativity to act, right? So if you don't give that space early on in the education field, you're actually missing that window. So the biggest impact is to keep the doors open beyond those successful business entrepreneurs alone, but to say that we need more entrepreneurial thinking on the social and environmental side too. Yeah. Nice question. Yeah. So I'm hoping that that encourages some of us to act on our causes that we care for, right? How are we doing on time? Almost there? Yeah, if there's any last questions, else, as I said, I'm really curious beyond our time frame too, because I'm very much here, part of the university, in case you have some ideas to bounce to see how we can bring it into action. Yeah. Yes.
Do you like agree that they're like kind of like a good example of social entrepreneurship, like with making money, but also helping people in the community and like the environment? Because earlier in your slide, you said that they do it so like they sell nature clothes to help people go out more into nature, but also help their business grow.
Yeah, and their primary focus is planet, right? They're kind of saying that every proceed that they get from their profitability is going for climate justice. And they're also making sure that people practice the minimalism rather than buy mindlessly. So their advertisement or their marketing campaign is geared towards it. And the question that you have while you ask that, is making money or a business opportunity around a social or environmental cause, is it a bad thing? In business, we don't think at all, because it's actually the other way around, right? Like if you are passionate about people and planet and you come up with a solution and it's not viable, it's not having a way by which it can continue. So actually, the founder of Patagonia says that they are doing what they're doing so that they can do justice to the planet and to the people, and profit is the way by which they do it. So if you have a huge profit while doing it, to me, it's not a bad thing, right? Because speaking to your earlier question, why do we not see those social entrepreneurs in the big limelight? Because maybe they are not as sustainable as those commercial entrepreneurs. So we do want social and planet-based solutions to scale to an extent that they are sustainable, profitable businesses too. So in social entrepreneurship, we say that making money is not a bad thing. If you're making money, it doesn't mean that you're not doing good, right? You can do good and at the same time, sustain that doing good by having a business model around that. So having a product which competes with the quality that any other businesses that can do, and at the same time using that profit to advance the cause of planet and people, is better off than having a business that is selling just mindlessly, right? So in that sense, they say that instead of going public and listing in the stock markets, they are using their proceeds to fund the third sector, the nonprofits who are working for environmental justice. So it's just a hybrid alternate model to do good, but at the same time using the business entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah, I know we are having our next speaker here. Yeah, okay, so we will take up more question in case you have offline. Yeah, thank you all. So I hope you will get in touch with the event.